Christmas has many different meanings. It really depends on whom you ask. But if there's a common ground that applies whether one is English, American, German or Japanese, a Christian or not, conscious or unconscious of the feast's history, it's that Christmas is a certain feeling, a nostalgia not only towards our own childhood, but time in general, as it feels like all the traditions we associate with this holiday have been around, well, forever. Presents, cookies, the Christmas tree, red-cloaked Santa Claus from the North Pole, and perhaps the most traditional tradition of them all,
Ding dong, belly the sky is ringed with angels singing.
things are, of course, also more complicated than that. As soon as we begin to really look for the origins of our Christmas traditions, the first cracks begin to appear. Taken as a whole, the historical foundation for this holiday is shaky, to say the least. You may already know about the origin of Saint Nicholas' red uniform, and that he isn't in fact from the North Pole, but what today is Turkey. It's still surprising that the widespread standard of presents under a tree in the cozy family living room is actually no older than 200 years. And even back then, these things were fashioned to appear as age-old customs. Soon, it became difficult to tell tradition from fabrication. One such fable being the invention of the Christmas tree by Martin Luther. A story that may be false, yet not without a true core, as the Reformation did introduce a new emphasis on domestic worship, Luther himself celebrating Christmas in the circle of his family. Before and beyond the Reformation, the Nativity of Jesus was certainly a significant event in the liturgical calendar, but, like the other feasts, celebrated in church and not the cozy living room. As for all such celebrations, there was a host of songs and imagery dedicated to it, communicating something between joy and wonder, just without any trace of that homely, jingle-bellsy winter Christmas cheer we have come to expect. This motet was composed by the most influential composer of the High Renaissance, Josquin des Près, over a Latin text that predated his work by 200 years. Already the opening line isn't exactly Christmas carol material, as it meditates on the Nativity's interference with the natural order. And even another 200 years later, when the Renaissance's refined austerity had long been replaced by the theatrical effects of the Baroque, Arcangelo Corelli's concerto, written specifically for Christmas Eve, perhaps unexpectedly starts something like... It's perhaps a little hard to believe, but this really is Christmas music. What makes it so incompatible with how Christmas feels today is that it doesn't really serve to celebrate homeliness, domestic comfort, a settled life reinsured by customs and traditions from the olden days, whenever that was. For Arcangelo Corelli, Josquin des Près, or the monk who wrote down Praeter Rerum Seriam, Christmas must have meant something fundamentally different. A dramatic, supernatural upheaval of the world order. Not cozy stability, but much rather exaltation, almost bordering on fright. After all, the Christmas story doesn't begin with Merry Christmas, but fear not. So it's this one time every year that people around the world engage in what essentially is early music. And in principle, the ideas behind this are not so different from what draws me or you to music of the distant past. More than any other tradition, song can not only carry ideas across the centuries, but emotions even more so. A simple melody alone can carry a feeling through time, with or without the need for context. And being sung ages after its inception, it can come to new life, like a blossom from a dried up branch.
Es ist ein Rosensprung aus einer Wurzel zart, als uns die Alten sungen, aus erster kam die Art und hat ein Blümlein bracht, mitten im kalten Winter, wohl zu der halben Nacht. Das Röslein, das ich meine, davon Jesaja sagt, hat uns gebracht alleine, Mari, die reine Magd, aus Gottes ew'gem Rat, hat sie ein Kind geboren, wohl zu der halben Nacht.
We have already reached the end of this episode, but there is still something I'd like to say, this time in a more conversational, free way, as it's also a more personal thing that I'm communicating. So Memo is a project that I've been running for, well, almost a year now, and initially the idea with Memo was to do a show that comes, you know, like a radio program or something every week. Every Friday there was going to be a show, and well, somehow for the first 16 weeks I kind of pulled it off. I don't even know how. I guess I just had a lot of free time. I just, you know, came out of my studies, and then after a while I had to make a little break. Well, on the one hand, because I wanted to kind of restructure some things, rethink what I want to do with Memo, but there was also a bit more of a sort of practical, very concrete, real-life concern, which is, it takes about 40-50 hours, you know, a whole week of reading, researching, writing, practicing, recording and cutting and releasing and producing to make one video. And even though I really love that work, as you can maybe sort of tell also in my videos, I really enjoy it very much. Well, it's not, I mean, it doesn't pay. I'm also not sure if everyone sort of always noticed that there's no company or no foundation or whatever behind this. Like, I'm one guy doing all of this, and since I had sort of the free time in the very beginning, you know, I could just do it. But eventually I realized, wait, I actually have to earn money and pay rent, you know. And this is then when I thought, okay, I need to kind of think of something. And then music is one of those things where it doesn't create money. Like, you know, it's not like money comes onto my table and then I take some. You can only really earn a living as a musician when people appreciate it to the point where, you know, they give you something. You're basically kind of living off donations in one way or another. And the thing is that, you know, if I just went the normal route, if I just tried to get as many sort of little concerts here and there, to somehow scrape together enough money and teach there, and I don't know, maybe wait some tables here, then it would be impossible to do Memo, to do something that takes 40-50 hours, to do the research, to sit down, to not have to work maybe for a day and really go to a library and actually read, and it's just I guess what became clear pretty quickly that it will need a bit of a sort of creative and new approach to make this work somehow. And I thought, well, maybe crowdfunding is the way to go for Memo. And then also I spent another couple of weeks really trying to think about it. I spoke with some of my friends and really tried to find a way that sort of makes sense. And well, then I introduced it 2 or 3 weeks ago in my last episode of Memo that Memo is now on patreon.com, which is a website dedicated to exactly that. So viewers can become so-called patrons by pledging a small amount. It's the sort of reference rule of thumb there was 1 coffee. So like, I don't know, like $2 maybe, or maybe a bit more, depending what you pay for a coffee wherever you live. That is then going to be donated to me whenever I release a new episode of Memo. And even though I had, of course, hoped that this whole crowdfunding idea would somehow work out more or less, I was still surprised, because after only 1 week of introducing the model, it was 25 people who signed up to become patrons to support Memo from 15 different countries, which that's also something that really just kind of baffles the mind, because it's really around the world. It's Europe, basically almost every European country, and then there's of course the United States, Canada, Australia, Japan. It's really across the globe. And yes, so well, you can see the names sort of here. I will show them. I just want to express my sincere gratitude to everyone who came forth and took the initiative to support Memo, and especially since the internet is so full of things that kind of scream for our attention, and then to take the time and act and do something like that. And I don't know, I'm just really moved by that. And furthermore, I would like to express my thanks towards the first sponsor who signed up to support Memo in a very special way. You can see it here on the side. It's the online string service Cuerdas Pulsadas, run by David Morales, where you can find a huge assortment of strings. I mean, not only loose strings for all kinds of instruments, also with timed discount offers. And well, I can only advise you to have a look on the website. And if you're considering becoming a patron and supporting this project, Memo, you can either find more information on my own website or directly on patreon.com/musikermemo. Any kind of contribution, however small, it means a lot to me. It is a real help. And well, together these contributions, after all, make Memo a possibility now and especially in the future. So what remains to be said after this, well, perhaps a little lengthy personal section is, well, first of all, to those of you watching this video right after it came out, so more or less in the holiday season, have a wonderful new year. And well, in general, I hope you'll be enjoying the work I'll be putting out in the weeks and months to come. I'll do my best to offer something new every time, to improve with every episode, and just to keep Memo fresh. So hopefully we'll see each other in the next episode of Memo.